Church, please stand.
Would you pray with me? Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this evening, God, and we thank you for the many blessings that you've given us. Thank you, God, for the beauty of your creation and another glorious day, Lord, that we can just worship you. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the creative gifts and the minds and the hearts that you have represented here for the city of Watertown. God, we thank you for the authority that you've given them and the creativity that you've given them to exercise, Lord, that authority and work for the best interests of this city and the people within it. Father God, we just pray that all these things would be done to your glory and honor, that they would be done in order, God, according to your word and your will. We pray, Lord, that we would experience your mercy and your kindness in new and fresh ways every day. Lord, we pray these things in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gabe.
All right. I am going to call the Tuesday, September 17th council meeting to order. Elissa, will you please call the roll?
Mudler, Tortomasi,
Aye.
Ritten,
Here.
Larson,
Here.
Polthouse. Here. Rather,
Here.
Schmidt,
Here.
Marone,
Here.
Hiltz.
Here. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Our next item is the minutes of the council meeting from September 3rd. Any additions or corrections to those minutes? Okay. Next is comments from citizens present. Okay. The first person is Keith. If you would please go to the microphone and just state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Keith Strage. I live at 1208 Juneau Street. And my concern that I want to bring to you people tonight is the traffic on Juneau Street. It is used, the thing that bothers me, it's being used as a shortcut to bypass the stop sign, stop and go lights on 4th and 16, where they come down Juneau Street, they'd make a left-hand turn off of R onto Juneau, take Juneau to Allward, roll that stop sign, take a right, get back to the frontage road, roll that stop sign usually, and keep on going. And they just reverse it. And it's when we first moved there 6 years ago, there was a few cars. But now with that new apartment house, we have traffic there. It's not constant, but there's a lot of traffic and there's a lot of speeding. I mean, the cars go down there sometimes. They're flying. They really are flying. But there's one other concern for the whole city is the traffic is going to get heavier and heavier. Right now school buses are using it as a shortcut, and it's all retired people on that street, and there's no reason for a school bus to go down that road, because all you have to go is another half a block, and they can go down the frontage road. So that is my concern. I don't know if anything can be done about it. I know you got 3 jurisdictions that would be involved, including the county because of R. If it was up to me, and I'll just make my suggestion, is I would southbound on R towards the village or towards the city, I would put a no left turn at Juneau, and that would stop the people from shortcutting from that way. The other way is a little trickier. I don't know how we do that, but it really gets irritating after a while because since those apartments opened up, there's a lot of traffic there. And we even have semis come down there once in a while. I understand it, they go over to the Moose Lodge, but even when the Moose Lodge is a big function, we don't have that kind of traffic. But in the morning, it starts about 6 o'clock, goes till about 8:30, 9 o'clock, and it's just one right after another. So those are my concerns. If anything can be done about it, we'd really appreciate it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Keith. Is that all we have? Okay. Next is committee reports. We have the Finance Committee of September 9th, the Plan Commission from September 9th, and the Public Safety and Welfare meeting from September 4th. Any comments on the minutes? Next is communications and recommendations. First is a library update. Peg.
Good evening, Peg Checka. I'm the director at the Watertown Public Library. Just to bring you up to date on a few things, we are continuing the campaign. Planning committee is still working hard at work on raising the last $300,000 for the library project. And I am now meeting with our architect on a weekly basis to try to start finalizing some of the plans. I was telling our city engineer earlier today that it's interesting that the block where the library starts and the grade up to Washington Street is about 9 feet. So that will present some interesting design, I'm going to say opportunities for the library when we add the new addition on. But we'll be meeting with the architect and then also the building campaign committee, which is a group of community members. Will be meeting with the architect also to make some final decisions. And then the final plans will, of course, come before the city council, and then we will also share those with the community. A few other things at the library. We're back into full swing with our fall programming, and we now offer continuing a really popular program we started last year, which is programming for homeschooling families at the library for kids and teens. And we also are offering tech tutor opportunities, some job search assistance for people, a caregiver workshop, and those who use an Instant Pot, we're going to host a program on that. And new to our collection this fall, hopefully will be cake pans. So if you don't want to spend $15 to $20 on a cake pan you might use once, you can come and borrow that from the library. We did change the storybook out at the Storybook Trail at Brancourt Park. And we've been working with the Greater Watertown Community Health Foundation. They did give us a grant to update and smooth out our strategic planning for the library. So now we've refined our mission statement, and now we're working on our goals and our strategies. And we also have a grant from our library system to offer patrons opportunities to preserve their family memories. So we'll be able to convert video cassettes to DVDs, convert slides to a flash drive, and also scan photos, and those you can also scan to a flash drive. And see if I have anything else on here. Don't forget the farmer's market on Thursday afternoons. We got a local bread person there, and the bread is delicious. So, thank you.
Thanks, Peg. All right, next is the disallowance of a claim by Amy Stilling. The information is in your packets. We had one of these a couple of meetings ago in which we went into closed session during this meeting. What we've done is done that closed session at the Finance Committee level, and now you have the information here. Are we providing the recommendation from Finance?
We just
Is
have
it
the
fine to
letter
do?
From the
Okay.
insurance company.
So the letter from the insurance company is in your packets, and it is talking about a disallowance, and the Finance Committee supported that. So with that, I would answer any questions or look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to disallow the claim.
Thank you. Motion by Kilps, seconded by Rather. Questions? Alyssa?
Kilps,
Aye.
Tortomasi,
Aye.
Britton,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Holthouse.
Aye.
Rather,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Abstain.
Marone.
Aye.
All right, our next item is employee recognition. We have one for this evening, but he was unable to join us at the meeting. So I'd just like to recognize James Graff Jr. He has been with Auxiliary Fire for 15 years. So thank you to James for his service to our fire department. Next is accounts payable.
I'll make a motion to approve. contract.
Motion by Kilps, seconded by
Second.
Larson. Any question on the accounts? Elissa?
Kilps,
Aye.
Tortomasi,
Aye.
Britton,
Abstain.
Larson,
Aye.
Holthouse.
Aye.
Rather,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Marone.
Aye.
Next is reports and miscellaneous business. You have the Airport Commission from August 14th, Cable, TV, and Regulatory Board of August 8th, the Cash and Investment Summary from August 31st, Committee of the Whole from September 3rd, Historic Preservation and Downtown Design Commission from August 21st, the Housing Authority of July 17th, Library Board of Trustees from July 11th and 25th, the Licensing Board from September 4th and 11th, Park, Recreation, and Forestry Commission from August 5th, the payroll summaries for August 28th to September 10th, the Police and Fire Commission from August 12th, reserve balances August 31st, the Senior Center Advisory Board August 21st, Site Plan Review from September 9th, Tourism Commission from May 9th and June 13th, and the Transit Commission from August 27th. Any questions on all of those? Okay. We will move on to licenses. Our first item is an application for a taxi cab license from Fast Ride LLC.
Make a motion to table that.
Okay, we have a motion to table and a second. Provided by Rather. I'll tell you why. So we had two things arise after the licensing board meeting. One was an awareness of some additional insurance coverage that needed to be provided. During the comment period for that public hearing, there was people attesting to being drivers, and those people need to be insured on the vehicles. So we relayed that information to Mr. Bartz. And the second item is more procedural in nature. This has to be noticed and come before you all as a resolution, not as just a license to voice vote on. So that's the only hiccup. As soon as we receive that additional insurance information, we've already started drafting the ordinance or the resolution. It'll come back before you all for a vote. So that's kind of the backstory as to why we're tabling it tonight. I fully expect it will be back by the next meeting.
Does that need to go back to the licensing board then?
No. No. Nope.
So 2 weeks?
Yeah, I would fully expect that you guys would be voting on it at the next meeting. And we spoke to Mr. Bartz. Elissa talked with him on the phone today. Any other questions? Should we call the roll? Or we'll just voice vote on that?
I would say voices.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thanks, everyone. Next is a Class B malt and liquor license for JDTH LLC doing business as D&J Sports Bar at 215 South 3rd Street. Jerry Heller is the agent.
I'll move for approval.
Thank you. Motion by Larson, seconded by
I'll second.
Britton. Any questions on this one? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next is a special event permit for Trinity Lutheran Church, the chili cook-off at Riverside Park on Sunday, October 13th from 10 till 5. Brett Lozier is the applicant.
I'll move for approval.
Thank you. Motion by Larson, seconded by Britton. Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, next is another special event permit for the March to November Run Turkey Run 5K on Thursday, November 28th, from 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. Sarah Sullivan is the applicant.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Motion by Marone, seconded by Schmidt. Any questions on this one? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next is another special event permit. This is for the AMVETS Post 35 AMVETS Rummage Sale at Riverside Park on September 12th through the 15th from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Eric Gerard is the applicant.
I make a motion to accept that license.
Motion by Rather, seconded by Schmidt. Yes, it was last weekend. And yes, this should be the last one. I appreciate your patience. Any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next is a special event permit for the Watertown Unified School District. This is for their homecoming parade on October 4th from 4 to 4:30. Alyssa Falk is the applicant.
I'll move for approval.
Thank you. Motion by Larson, seconded by Tortomasi. Comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and our last license is the beverage operator applications on Exhibit A.
I'll move to approve per Exhibit A.
Motion by Marone, seconded by,
I'll second.
ooh,
I'll second.
Written. I saw his hand first. Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thanks, everyone. Okay, let's go on to ordinances. Our first is ordinance 19-18. This is to amend Chapter 550 of the official zoning map, rezoning 217 North Fifth from central business to two-family residential, TR6. This is here from me and the Plan Commission on the second reading.
I'll move for ordinance 1918 on its second reading.
Motion by Rather, seconded by Ritten. Any question on this one? Elissa?
Rather,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Marone,
Aye.
Kilps,
Aye.
Tortomasi,
Aye.
Ritten,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Holthouse,
Aye.
Next is ordinance 19-19. This is to repeal section 76-24, exceptions to imposition of special charges. This is here from me and the Finance Committee on the second reading.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. Motion by Larson,
I'll
seconded
second.
by Holthouse. Any questions on this one? Elissa?
Larson,
Aye.
Holthouse,
Aye.
Rather,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Abstain.
Marone,
Aye.
Kilps,
Aye.
Tortomasi,
Aye.
Ritten,
Aye.
Next is ordinance 19-20. This is to repeal and amend Article 2, Section 428-7 through 428-10, special event license. This is here of public events. This is here from me and the licensing board on the first reading.
I'll move for ordinance 19-20 on its
you.
first reading.
Motion by Marone, seconded by Rather. I told you guys it would be coming, and it is.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I didn't really have a chance to compare this to the existing ordinance. Can you,
Yes.
someone who was involved in this, let me know what's happening,
Sure.
Is it, I see there's some charges, there's other fees, is that new? Is there?
Good question. I'll speak to what I can think of offhand that's new, and if Elissa or Rose want to jump in, please do. So just to give it this a little bit of backstory, you'll remember we had an ordinance that said one thing and a resolution with an associated policy that said another. And so upon realizing that, we started defaulting to the ordinance and then kind of started this process of involving every department that has a stake in this game and kind of revising the special event ordinance requirements. I'd say the biggest items are that we upped the fee, so that went from $25 to $50 for the application. We did a good solid search, and that is still half the cost of a lot of cities around us. Most are at least around $100. And I can tell you, it doesn't even begin to cover the administrative costs we have of processing these applications. So, and I'm not saying we always need to cover it, but there's still a pretty wide spread there. So I'm on page 2C, exemptions. We called out exemptions for special events that the sole purpose is to celebrate a federally recognized holiday. They still have to apply so that we have awareness of those events, but those fees will be waived. So for federally recognized holidays, application, but no payment. We frankly, if you compared them side by side, you'd see it's a substantial amount of changes to the application itself, which is dictated in this ordinance. We basically remove the things we have no control over regulating. So there, for example, there was something that would say, if you're going to have over 250 people attend, no one is counting attendees. So let's not write an ordinance that we can't regulate and enforce. There was another one about, potable water and the appropriate amount of bathrooms per size of event and, things that we just don't have the capacity to regulate. We still require these items, but we weren't dictating the math essentially around how people would choose to have the amount of bathrooms or the amount of potable water or the amount of lumens. We made it a little bit more, I think, a little less archaic. I think we just updated that language but kept essentially the same amount of lumens. We just changed it from, I think the candle, whatever it was called, candle lengths to lumens, which is more consistent with our other parts of our ordinances. The percentages that you'll see under licensing fees under I, those have not changed. That was, honestly, I would say that probably changed a year or two ago, maybe. It's changed since I was on the council, but we didn't change it here. So that table that you'll see is not changed from the current ordinance that we
Talking
have.
about the tiered charges
Yeah.
for city
Yep.
expenses?
Yep, that hasn't changed. We kept that the same as it was. We did add insurance. You'll see that I'm kind of hopping around, I'm sorry, that's under G. And that's simply to protect the interests of the city. You know, a lot of these events happen on city property, and we don't want to be held responsible should something go awry. We were a little bit more prescriptive about mapped routes so that we have that from the get-go. We do a lot of estimates for barricades and, you know, auxiliary police and everything based on what those mapped routes are. We eliminated some duplication. There were things that would say, you know, if this is for a run, a walk, or a 5K, so, or a jogging, like, it was just duplicative. So we cleaned up some language there. And then there is still an appeal process, because one of the larger changes is that these special events won't be coming before this body anymore for approval or denial. So when I was on the council, we never saw special event permits. They would just get approved at the licensing board level or just at the clerk level. Then we identified the ordinance, which required it to go to licensing board and then to you all for approval. So we're reverting back to not bringing it before this body for approval. Alderman Ritten asked for a summary of those events to be provided, and you will still provide that to you in communications and recommendations, so you have an awareness of what's going on in your districts. But truthfully, as you can see, there's timing issues of putting it before the licensing board and then also putting it before you all in time for some of these events. So to keep us from getting into this cycle, the approval process is living in the clerk, with the city clerk. There is an appeal right to the licensing board should the city clerk ever deny someone. Because of that change, we also adjusted the days for the application. I think it was 60 days, and we changed it to 45. Anything I missed, city attorney?
I think that covers
Covered a-
most of the highlights.
Okay. Chiefs, you guys have anything? No? No? Okay. I think that's pretty much high level.
I guess I have a question. This would be, I guess it's unrelated to this change, since that table didn't change, but the cost, I'm surprised that we increase the cost every year on the tiered charges. So the first year they have an event, we charge them 20%, or there's no charge for city expenses, but they have it a subsequent year, we start charging them
Right.
20%, and then by the sixth year, we're charging them 100%. I don't know what those costs are. Are we talking about $100? Are we talking about
No.
$1,000 or $20?
I know some of them teeter in the thousands, some are in the hundreds. I know when we passed this, the thought process was the first year, people organizing these events don't really know what their success is going to be. So let's not charge them. Let's let them realize what that cost is. And Dot in the clerk's office does provide an estimate of the cost so that for the second year, if you keep it the same, event organizer, you will have an awareness of what that cost will be in time. And the step or the incrementalism kind of lends it to the more substantial the event gets, you know, the more they get used to running one of these events, the more capable they are to help reimburse for some of the expenses. I know when we were really seeing a rise of 5Ks, I know the chief has spoken to this in some of our internal meetings, you know, to staff road closures and set out barricades and clean up garbage, it can get costly, so.
But in a city park, I would assume, like, trash removal and those things are part of the normal duties of the park and recreation department. We're not charging them extra if they have an event, are we?
I know that we would charge extra if it's above and beyond, which a lot of these events aren't just our standard pickups. I think garbage might be a bad example for me to hinge on. It's normally barricades and road closures and auxiliary police.
I would think staffing charges might be,
What are some other examples of what shows up on that charge most often?
The majority of them are gonna be for, really, it's barricades, no parking signs, it's street department time, and then usually there's auxiliary officers and sworn officers who are assigned to the events for traffic control or, you know, different things like that. So that's where the majority of the charges come, but, yeah, it can be anywhere from $100 up to $1,000 or $2,000.
I mean, and if you-
Depending on the size of the event and what you're looking to close, and how many, you know, if you wanna close Main Street, it takes a lot more officers and auxiliaries to do that because we have to reroute traffic than it does
Sure.
to, say, close, you know, 8th Street, so.
Okay, thank you.
So a question on this one. Well, the timetable one, the first, so we're requiring a 45-day advance notice from the eventee person. And then we're giving the clerk 45 days to make that determination. So we're giving a 90-day time frame to essentially turn around, but then we're only allowing a 5-day appeal process.
There's a 45-day window that we want them to apply before the event. So if
Correct.
and then the appeal process is so that we don't drag our feet.
Right,
It's so
but
that we quickly get them to a point of appeal.
we're still giving the clerk 45 days to make that determination from the date of receipt of the applicant. So
Yes.
effectively, if they dawdle,
We give 45 days.
yeah, it's under J. You get 45 days.
It's in total. Yes.
Okay, well, it reads as if it's two separate timelines. From the time of, so under E1, it says they turn into the same clerk's office at least 45 days prior to the event. And then under J, it says, coordinate, approve, or deny the lease within 45 days of its filing. So it's two different timetables.
I think that's a valid point, too, because if there's a delay in getting it issued, and then they find out that it's been denied, they have 5 days to respond. If there's no restriction or time limit on the clerk side that says that they will issue that or respond to that license within 10 days, you need to you have to make sure you're not coming up to the 5-day mark, or within that 5-day mark. You get too close to that, they don't have time to do a decent appeal. And 5 days doesn't seem like time to get together an appeal if you had to. It seems highly unlikely that you'd encounter that, but we don't put any restriction on the time allowance for the clerk to respond to the request.
Well, we do. It's 45 days.
So the intention here is to have 45 days. So if I apply today, that we go through our entire process in 45 days. And we want that 45-day window to be 45 days prior to the event. So if it's appearing duplicative at 90 days, that's not the intention. The intention is one set of 45 days. And that 45 days exists because from the point of application to the point of approval, it runs through every city department. So it's not just the clerk getting it and, just sitting on it or something for
No.
45 days. It goes through the street department, the health department.
The appropriate department
Police.
based on the type of event application.
I think we send it to all departments every single time, so that they can say, not us, or us in most cases, but yes. There's a standard listserv that it goes out to.
Okay, I think just for admin purposes, to clarify the language between those 2 points, because as you read them as two separate timetables. I can see the intent being the 45-day from start to finish, but the way it reads it, it can be interpreted so that it appears to be almost 90 days for a 5-day.
Yeah, yeah. We can take that back. I don't read it that way because it's two separate sections, but
Right, but it's two separate, but the whole umbrella of the change.
yeah.
I made a bunch of
It
notes on
just
this one.
seems to me too, there's not, if it takes you 45 days to process it, and then you deny it, there's no way they could appeal and get it overturned in time for the event. That would be sort of the rub there, right? There's no, they have 5 days within notice, written request within 5 days of denial for a notice of modification, or within 30 days of the licensing board's decision. By then, it becomes a moot point because the event is over.
Right, but if we stack up these dates to 90 days, every event you would think of would never get approved. I mean, they come in a lot of cases, they'll come in about 4 days before their event, if they aren't an existing event. I know some of the people in this room host events.
Yeah.
That timetable, as you guys have seen, applicants cut short. So I don't want to be adding more and more time and essentially making it harder for them to get approved.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure that that's the answer. And it might just say that the city clerk will make every reasonable attempt to make a decision within 14 days. That allows them time to respond. And it wouldn't really put us in a box. It would be the other side of it. And we could certainly pass this the way it's written, and then if it turns out that there are problems with it, we could review it and modify it.
So but I concur with Alderperson Larson. Again, I think I see the 45-day window only because E1 says you need to have a completed application filed with the city clerk's office 45 days before the event, but then the clerk has 45 days to return that notification, whether or not it's approved, and if it's turned down and it's the 45th day, that's the day of their event, then they have 5 days to take a look at, to
Appeal.
go back and appeal that decision, and they would lose their time frame with their advertisements, et cetera. So, I mean, I think we need to say 45 days, but then we need to make a decision sometime period before that 45 days, so they have time to do the effective repeal, or the repeal if it's turned down.
Like maybe requiring it, if your event is, say, October 1, your application must be in by August 1st. So require a 60-day advance turn-in time, so that allows for that time frame for both the review process and the appeal process prior to the event start.
That's been difficult for
Yeah,
our
You know,
applicants.
I can only
I can
imagine.
tell you that.
I understand that, but again,
I mean,
I kind of agree. I think if you run that 45-day window out to the open and then you reject the license or the special
Right.
event, then that's the day they're going to hold the event, and then they'd have to cancel all their advertising, et cetera. So I think we need to take a look at that, those sections.
We can certainly take a look at our approval time. I'm not devaluing what you're saying. We turn these around as quick as we can. I don't know that anyone's been denied, that I'm aware of. And, but we can certainly adjust. I would rather see us adjust our turnaround time than requiring more time of the applicants, because then when someone comes in at 58 days, I can tell you, one of the workers in the clerk's office is going to say, can I accept this? And then we're going to be like, well, it's 58 days, not 60 days, and so I would rather us keep their application period at 45 days. And we can take back, if you guys are willing to, you don't have to, but if you're willing to, I'd rather talk to our department heads and say, how much time do you need? Do you need
We can-
3 weeks?
We can give them 30 days, and then if you
Yeah, I
reject
just
it
don't
at that
wanna-
point, then they've got 15 days. They've got the first 5 days to go through their appeal.
And that seems reasonable. I just don't want to arbitrarily pick that
No.
amount of days without talking internally with operationally, what do we need? So if you guys,
I'll make a motion to refer it back to the licensing board. Is that where you want?
no, I'd rather not go back to.
Table it?
I'd rather have a motion to approve it, and I'll bring it back the second time and we can amend the second time at the second reading. That's an ordinance, so it'll take 2. Or you can make a suggestion, if you feel more comfortable, Alderman Larson, you can make a suggestion of 30 days, and I can talk internally and see if 30 days works. And if it doesn't, then we can amend that amendment at the second reading. I'm agreeable to that, too.
Some questions on a couple other points, too.
Sure.
For the insurance and for H, if you have an event that doesn't meet those thresholds, are you going to require it, an event permit in the first place? One that doesn't have an application fee, one that doesn't have a participation fee? Or are we going to require a permit for those things?
Like a nonprofit or a not-for-profit? Is that what you mean?
Nonprofit, like special event that doesn't require road closures, not going to require, any kind of application fee. It's going to be a very small group of people, won't impact anything other than your normal groups that already operate in the streets without permitting.
If they don't, and the city attorney can stop me here, if they don't require a special event permit, this clause would not be applicable.
No,
If they don't have if they don't need a special event permit,
the insurance,
the insurance.
each applicant for a special event license that includes alcohol or more than 150 people per day, or involves a road closure, requires insurance.
But if they don't require a special event permit at all, it's just I'm renting the park for a small get-together.
I would defer to our parks director on that. I'm not sure what the parks require for reservation.
But I'm saying this section, it wouldn't be relevant if you don't need a special event permit.
Okay.
There may be something else relevant with the, you're correct, there may be something else relevant, or with the park department, but not as it would pertain to this ordinance.
That's what my question was, because
Yep.
I do events, we do kickoff events for certain nonprofits I work with that don't require closures and don't require any special attention, because last time there was like 3 of us.
Yeah.
So it's like 3 of us went on a run. So it's those kind of small events that would be not meeting
Yeah.
those thresholds, to not have to pull a permit that doesn't have advertising, doesn't
Yep.
have, it has community buy-in, just not the requirement of doing
Yeah.
those kind of things.
We define, in A1, A is where we define what would require a permit. And it sounds like what you're talking about likely wouldn't require a permit.
Right, just how it reads, it potentially could, that's why I want to clarify, so as long as it doesn't meet the thresholds under the application process specifically for the insurance, then the event should be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the insurance, have we costed out what that it costs as an estimate for $1 million policy?
I know that others already have it, and are you aware of what those costs are?
I did not research that, no.
Do you guys know offhand, just by chance, what your special event insurance costs? It's inexpensive? It's expensive? Okay.
Yeah, it usually covers like 2 or 3
Events?
liquor. If it involves like liquor, more expensive. And it usually is like 2 or 3 events we can have under that special.
Under that policy? Okay. Any other questions, Alderman Schmidt?
I think that covers most of the ones that I had made notes on. And then enforcement, so $1,000 fee. And then there's a couple ones in like noise ordinances. What are we determining reasonable for the event for noise? Because sound travels and there's not much you can do about it if you're holding a open-air event. Is that really an enforceable aspect of it, I guess?
I know that we dictate the number
Of decibels, I think, in other
of
places.
decibels. Jacob, do you have any comments on that?
We have for all zoning districts, there is a required property. So for every zoning district, there is a performance standard for all the city under Chapter 550. If there's a violation of that, there's certain, again, we're probably not the best to enforce our noise violations section under Chapter 550 because we give you a letter and 15 days notice to correct your noise violation. So Chapter 550 really doesn't apply here because odds are your event's done within 15 days. But I believe under the nuisance ordinance, there is a noise portion to that, and I think that's more enforced by the police department as opposed to our office.
There'd certainly be the noise. When Riverfest is going on, I can hear the fireworks down on the south side of town where I live.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see how you can restrict a special event if they're gonna have fireworks or they're gonna have a band and they're on the river. You're gonna hear it all over town.
Mm-hmm. So, what I would say is that we need some limitation for the rogue players. People, we can't just say there is no limitation to the amount of noise that is being produced by a special event. I'm not going to speak for the police chief, but I know that they exercise great judgment as it pertains to our special events. I know that as an alderperson, because people would call and complain to me that the police department won't do anything about, the Riverfest fireworks, because it was right in my district.
Sure.
So I've experienced the police department exercising caution with those types of complaints. I don't know, Chief, if you want to add anything to that.
Generally, when it comes to a special event, we don't have a lot of issues, and we don't have a lot of complaints, and we don't have a lot of enforcement. Our noise complaints generally are not from our special events, I would say. Very few of them. Riverfest is different. But our special events, if you're talking about 5Ks and 10Ks and most of the other events that we have seen so far, food trucks in the park, things like that, we just haven't had complaints on those things. The only one, a few of our run events have maybe a DJ. Some have had bands in the past, but I haven't really seen that lately. But we really haven't gotten any sort of complaints on those things. So,
So we say here, this line 7 says, under noise, no licensee shall permit any sound created by the special event activity to carry unreasonably beyond the boundaries of the special event premises.
You're looking at the guy that would determine reasonableness.
Right, so that's the standard.
Can I just jump into 410-40 is our ordinance on loud and unnecessary noise. It's about 4 or 5 paragraphs long with a lot of exceptions and different things like that. So that's the other noise violation ordinance that's already on the books that the police department enforces currently that I prosecute citations for on occasion, I would say.
And you think that would apply to a special event?
It absolutely would. All of our ordinances would apply. Just because you have a special event wouldn't mean you could avoid the traffic ordinances that we've adopted or anything like
Right.
that.
So how would it apply on something like Riverfest? Would Riverfest and the fireworks and the bands meet that standard of 410?
May I? Riverfest is under its own set of ordinances,
Okay.
completely separate from the special event process. We'll be taking a look at that late fall with the Riverfest board chair and revisiting that ordinance as a whole. It's antiquated from the 80s. So, but from what I know, Riverfest is
That
not
would
my
meet the
first.
standard under 410, or that would exceed the standards under 410?
Riverfest is not mentioned in 410. The Riverfest ordinance is, if you give me a moment, I could provide the citation, is
Well, not Riverfest, but I'm thinking about an activity like Riverfest. Say there was an event, say that a segment of the community decided to hold a celebration, maybe for whatever reason. And they decided they wanted to have fireworks and bands, and it was something similar to Riverfest. Maybe it's a winter festival or something else. Would their expectation be that if they were at Riverside Park, that they could hold an event to that level of noise and activity without being in violation of 410?
that would be at the discretion of law enforcement.
So it's not, it wouldn't be in violation? I mean, that's the
I-
question.
I can't,
Oh, okay.
I can't, I don't know. That would be the reporting officers called him,
I think it's
to me,
difficult to govern
it's-
hypothetical situations.
I guess what I'm asking you is what is in 410? What are the limitations? You said it's 2 paragraphs long. I don't have time to pull it up. I can pull it up. So are those the types of, would something like that be limited, or does that exceed the standard the enforceable standard that we have under 410? Would an event that had fireworks in the evening and bands exceed that, or those standards or not? I can look at it. It looks like this is gonna come back anyway, so I can look it up. If
I
it's
mean,
only-
we've had events that have had bands in the park, and their special event permits were approved. We have people light off fireworks from Memorial Day till the end of August.
And generally, that's a licensed activity because they have to hire a company to do that. It's not, you can't go out and just light them off. It has to be a licensed company that comes in to do that as well.
I'm thinking of the Stand Tall 9/11 barbecue. They had fireworks. We have examples where people have had large fireworks. We have examples where people have had bands in the park. And this section of the ordinance was not changed. So those events existed with this ordinance in play. And with that ordinance in play, I would assume as well.
and there's a music permit too in public places.
There's a lot of permits.
So that's also.
And I get that. I just, since we've got it out and we're looking at it, this is the time to look at it, and then we'll set it aside. And I'm not a big fan of saying, well, we have it in the ordinance in case we need it, but we'll never use it. It's like saying, I'm putting a loaded gun on the table, but I'm not gonna use it. What's the difference? Once we
Respectfully, Alderman Larson, I think there's quite a difference between a loaded gun on a table.
Well, I mean, when
And
you
noise.
say, I've got laws that I can enforce, but the chance of me enforcing them, you either meet the standard of the law or you don't meet the standard of the law. So if we pass an ordinance and we make that a standard, then everyone has to follow it. I mean, you know as well as I do, being an alderperson, that one of the most common complaints is that standards seem to be different, or people suspect that someone else is getting away with something that they're not able to do. So if we set a standard in an ordinance and we say, you have to meet these requirements, I don't think it's reasonable to say, well, but we probably would never use it. It's just for the renegades or people that we think we might need to control.
Well, it's
This
certainly
is,
within your
these are
purview.
laws that were
It's
passed.
certainly within your purview to offer an amendment to the ordinance, which we'd be happy to hear.
Okay. And I haven't had a chance to really go through it and think about it. I hadn't had a chance to look through it.
I know
If
as
we're
an-
going to delay it, I think that might be reasonable to do it. Is there great urgency on getting this through?
That is the purview of this council.
Yeah, I'd like to have more time to look at it. And I don't know if tabling it for 2 weeks is reasonable, or if you do want to have it looked at again by committee, I'd be glad to make a motion either way.
We have a motion to approve this right now, right?
We could make, yeah, we could have, yeah,
Oh, there-
but there could be a subsequent
There's a
motion
motion
to
by who?
table
And we
or
can-
refer.
We can amend it.
Okay. Thank you, Alderman Renton. We do have a motion and a second to approve as is. Alderman
Well,
Tortomasi.
We do have an awful lot of events in this city which are really good, and a lot of people enjoy them. Many of them are fundraisers that may be the biggest thing that they can do to support their organization. We start putting 6-page documents in front of people who want to have a fundraiser for their kids, for cancer, for medical needs and everything. I think we're putting too much restrictions on them. I appreciate the city people, employees trying to organize and make this something that we can follow in a reasonable way, but a 6-page document would scare the heck out of a lot of people. To buy insurance if they think they're going to have 150 people, is putting another burden on people who want to have events. I think this is just too much. So I'm going to vote against this. I think it needs to go back to committee and be cleaned up.
I just want to clarify, the application is 2 pages. This is just the ordinance that supports it, just so that you're aware. The application is, I think, a front and a back. And then they provide the mapped routes. I will say, we had pretty extensive conversation internally about the insurance. I'm not thrilled about requiring it either. I'm a big fan of all of our special events. But I'm also charged with protecting the city. And the last thing I need is a horse to go rogue or someone to be gravely injured at a public park or on our roadway, and we are responsible for that. So I would caution against that, but you are the governing body of this city, and that is in your purview to consider. But we are at a liability if these folks do not maintain proper insurance and they are injured in public facilities.
I have a question for the attorney. So most of these events have insurance liability release waivers that you have to sign to participate with. How does that coincide with releasing the indemnity of the city?
So,
So they're conducting a special event on the city, the event has pulled a permit, and then somebody hurts themselves at the event, although they've already signed the indemnity release from the organization and the associated location.
typically in those releases, at least that I've been involved with, the city is not listed as a party that would be released. It's just the organization putting on that particular event, at least the ones that I've reviewed. So if they're not releasing the city from liability, it wouldn't apply to the city.
So to answer Alderman Tortomasi's concern, not workaround, but an additional language could be, if they have that release waiver, it's pre-approved by the city attorney that exempts the city of indemnity, and if that would hold up from a legal standpoint, that would, in a sense, put the liability and the onus on the individual participating in the said event. I don't know if that's actually the best answer, but it's a form of middle ground, I would say.
That's a good idea. Could be terms and conditions on the application form.
On the
But again, I would still
Sure.
look at requiring it for, when you start adding contributing factors, large numbers of people, alcohol, I can see, so requiring that from a liability standpoint. But some of the smaller events that don't have those thresholds, but still meet the threshold for having the insurance, maybe find a middle ground and like tier it like we are the fees based on the size and the scope of the event as a form of saying, if you're above this, we understand it's going to be more liability to you as the organization, us as a city. But in the smaller event, all due diligence has been done to reduce risk and mitigate it as much as we can. So I think that's where we could find a middle ground on the smaller level events, potentially.
It's an option, and currently the application, that the applicant signs, there is indemnification language in there. I would caution, liability waivers are extensively litigated, and typically, you are not able to completely waive any and all damages that would result in an incident in a liability waiver. Individuals have won lawsuits against organizations even after signing a liability waiver and saying, I release I'm going to pick on the library, I release the public library from any and all damages. But by the way, I had this horrific accident that I had no way of knowing was going to happen. Therefore, I couldn't have released liability for it. Therefore, the library is still liable. I would really caution against using a waiver as a form of insurance, because frankly, there have been cases, time and again, where liability waivers have not withstood court challenges. As some background, again, this part of this was done while I was not here, but nearly every municipality in the state requires insurance of some level. The work group did consider several options for insurance. My recommendation was somewhere in the was to require it for most of the groups. The work group on this particular ordinance chose kind of this middle ground. So if you're not going to have alcohol, statistically, and you can talk to your insurance provider on this one, statistically, alcohol dramatically increases the types of injuries that an event has. Therefore, that's why alcohol was included as one of the types of events that would require insurance. More than 150 people a day, that the group thought was a pretty large attendance. If you're getting more than 150 people a day, that's a pretty large group, and the risks would obviously be greater in that instance. And closing the street, again, that is an instance where that's on our property. We own the street, we own the right-of-way. So we have to be very careful in those circumstances as well. So that's where the committee was. I don't know if, or the work group was in its recommendation. And again, I just would caution against falling back on a liability waiver to kind of, because it doesn't save everything.
So what is the current standard? If we were to vote no on this, we would stay with the way things are now. What's the current standard on insurance for special event licensees?
I'm just gonna pull that up. Sorry, just a moment.
That language was added or was just modified?
So public events is chapter 428-7.
One of the harder things about this too is it's hard to see the original. It's useful when there's, strikeouts and coloring, so you can kind of see the new language and the old language. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Okay.
It would have been heavily stricken, but we can provide that to you.
Yeah, if it comes back, if it passes a vote and comes back, or if it gets tabled and comes back.
428-7 and 8, it'd be 428-7 through 10. And currently, the ordinance does not require insurance. The resolution made the insurance permissive. But the current ordinance does not require any insurance for any event.
It made it, you
I'm sorry,
said,
Alderman Larson.
permissive?
I was going to ask for you to clarify, please. Under the resolution, it required,
It required, well, it was permissive. It may be required when asked of the event
The event
organizer.
organizer.
So that was completely up to,
The city clerk, maybe.
yeah.
Yeah.
There weren't any sort of rules in which what events would and wouldn't require insurance.
I kind of
like it how it's written right now, I wouldn't mess with the insurance part.
Well, the fact that we're trying to protect the city here, we're trying to protect the city for the first $1 million. After that, we can still get sued, we can still get dragged into anything that was serious if it took place on city property. We'd get sued anyway.
Unfortunately, that is kind of the nature of the, yeah, we
Right,
can
right.
always get sued.
And we carry insurance for that too, right?
Correct, and there are statutory limits to our liability, 50,000 to 100,000 depending on the circumstances. So we have some statutory protections in there, 89380.
I guess the current standard of requiring it on a case-by-case basis, I don't have a problem with that. If you feel like there may be a higher liability in an event than there is in another event, you may require insurance.
Yeah, internally, we've been trying to remove any opportunity to treat people differently than other people. So I am, and the people in this room can shake their head profusely, they're annoyed with me to the point where I'm guessing anyway. Where I'm trying to ensure that regardless of who you are or what you're doing, you can receive the same level of service and the same outcome from us. So I don't want anyone to have a reason to say, well, I came in to apply and Kirk got something different than I did, regardless of the topic. So, but again, that, if this is your purview, I'm just sharing the sentiment. I am uncomfortable with us arbitrarily providing or requiring things of certain people, but not of others. So we have a motion and a second, and we can take, I don't want to stop anyone, but I just want to bring us back to center for a second. And we can take a vote on that. I'm going to ask you a question, Rose. We have a motion and a second. If that motion and second fails, there's no motion to table or anything. It's done. It fails. It would have to be brought back.
So there wasn't a motion to table. I don't
No,
know if
I'm
that
saying
was
we
made.
have, I just wanted to clarify before we vote. There's a motion and a second to approve it as it is. If that motion fails to pass, we wouldn't be looking for another motion to table or anything like that. We would just proceed through to the next item.
Correct, it would fail.
Yep.
Yes.
I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Any other questions, comments? So we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution as it is, and I believe that started with Alderman Marone, if I can remember right,
Yes.
and a second by Alderman Rather. Any last comments, everyone? Yep.
I'd just like to say, I think, we could approve this and look for amendments at the second reading and hopefully have agreement at that point in time so we don't parlay this out farther. I mean, again, I think Kurt, Alderperson Larson, you'll have a chance to take a look at your noise sections, et cetera. And I think then we could make any amendments at the next reading. I don't think there's anything serious corrections involved. So I think that's what I would recommend, that I'm going to vote to approve the ordinance as listed, and we can make amendments with the second reading.
If it does pass here, I would certainly appreciate you all emailing me individually, not as a whole, what your suggestions are and your areas of concern, and we can work on those internally and bring it back at the second reading if we get to that point. Anyone else? All right, Elissa.
Marone?
Aye.
Kilps?
Aye.
Tartamasi?
No.
Britton?
Aye.
Larson?
No.
Holthouse?
Aye.
Rather?
Aye.
Schmidt?
No.
All right, so that passes
5-3.
at 5-3. So please send me your revisions, everyone. Regardless of if you voted yes or no, I would like to have your comments so we can get those incorporated. And obviously, if we're going to bring it back at the next meeting, the faster you can get those to us, the better off we are. So go ahead and send those to me via email, please. And thanks for a healthy conversation. I appreciate it. I appreciate your comments. Okay, our next is resolutions. And this is a resolution to honor a retirement of Jeff Perkle. So this is Exhibit 8862, Jeff Perkle retirement from the Forestry Department, and this is here from me.
I'll move for Exhibit 8862.
Motion by Marone, seconded by Rather. Alderman Marone, as Chair of Public Works, would you mind giving this one a read?
Sure. The resolution is for Jeff Perkel retirement from the Forestry Department, sponsor Mayor McFarland. Whereas Jeff Perkel has served as an employee of the City of Watertown since November 11th, 1980, and whereas Jeff Perkel has dedicated his career to serving the citizens of Watertown and the City of Watertown, and whereas Jeff Perkel has demonstrated integrity, knowledge, and professionalism in his work for the City of Watertown, now therefore be it resolved that the Common Council of the City of Watertown extends sincere gratitude to Jeff Perkel for his years of public service and wishes him many happy and rewarding years of retirement. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Jeff, would you mind joining us at the front? Randy and Jeff, do you guys want to come up too? You want to come up? You want to come up? No? All right. Hi. Thank you. So we have a Distinguished Service Award presented to our City Forester, Jeff Perkel, in recognition of your years of dedicated service to the City of Watertown and its citizens. November 11th, 1980 to September 20th, 2019, and this is presented by me and the Common Council. You can only grow by coming to the end of something and by beginning something else, and that is by John Irving. I asked your team here to provide us some comments, so here we have them. Jeff started with the city in November of 1980 and has worked for the Park Recreation and Forestry Department as a tree trimmer in Arborist 1 and 2, and most recently as our city forester. Jeff is extremely passionate about his job, caring for the city and parks and trees and the daily maintenance of the parks. Jeff's passion has saved many trees within the city. He has an eye for the future in trees that have and will be planted. Jeff's passion has been appreciated over the years and will be greatly missed. And I also hear that you are an excellent storyteller about past experiences. So
We'll save those.
we can save those for when we're not doing a public meeting.
Right,
So
right.
I'd like to give this to you, Jeff. Thank
All
you
right,
again. And gentlemen, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
No, just we'll miss Jeff. He's been a plus for the city, anybody that's ever dealt with him. He's always meant to do things the correct way.
And Jeff has gotten us through, I'm sure, a lot of the Emerald Ash Borer and a lot of other issues that have affected our trees. So we are very appreciative of all you've given to our city. We're very lucky to have employees like you.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Good. We're glad to hear that. Everyone hear that? He enjoyed it. So I'm just kidding.
I did. I really, if you know me, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
You know how I'm driven.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. So thank you. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay. I'll call.
Thank you, gentlemen. Alyssa, why don't we call the roll on that one?
Aye.
Aye.
Tortomasi.
Aye.
Britton.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Colthouse.
Aye.
Rayfield.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Okay. Our next is Exhibit 8863. This is authorizing a mutual aid agreement with Juneau Fire Department.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. Motion by Larson, seconded by Kilps. Any questions?
I'm assuming this is just an extension of an ongoing agreement we already have with them?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct, Chief?
Yes.
Okay.
Alyssa?
Larson.
Aye.
Colthouse.
Aye.
Rayfield.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Marone.
Aye.
Kilps.
Aye.
Tortomasi.
Aye.
Britton.
Aye.
Next is Exhibit 8864. This is support of a Dodge County broadband expansion, and this is here from me.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. Motion by Larson, seconded by Tortomasi. Any questions on this one?
Do we have an estimated cost that it's going to incur for us to?
None for us. Well, I shouldn't say that. My gut was none for us, but then instantly chirping in my mind was there might be like a $1,000 donation that they ask. This is just something that they've asked for all Dodge County municipalities to do so that they can apply for their grant.
So very minimal exposure to us.
And if, I wouldn't even be able, this is just a letter of support, so in the event that they would
Okay.
request funds of us, that would come back before this body. Yep. Good question. Any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, next is Exhibit 8865. This is authorizing the EMS service coverage agreement with Johnson's Creek. This is here from me and the Finance Committee. Thank you. Motion by Kilps, seconded by
I'll second.
Larson. Any questions or comments on this one?
So is this an increase in fee or is this a continuation of the existing fee for Creek?
Chief?
This is new. We have agreement with Lebanon to do that when they do not have the ability to staff a first out ambulance, that we charge a fee for that. This is an agreement that we're doing with Johnson Creek as well.
Okay, so it's a standard practice, we're just expanding into Johnson Creek that we haven't originally been.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
I think this is lower than we charge other ambulance services, isn't it?
No.
No, it's the same.
It's what we charge Lebanon.
Well, other municipalities.
So there's service coverage agreements where, because this gets a little dicey in my head too. So there's service coverage agreements, which are when we're covering for them. And then there are what we charge the townships, and that is us providing service for them all the time. So there are two different structures. One is for when we're providing what I equate to in my mind as like more than just backup. There's backup, which is mutual aid. And then there's coverage when they can't staff. And then there's what we provide the townships, which is they don't staff anything, and we completely support their areas. So this is the second one.
Well, I believe this is even lower than we charge our own citizens for ambulance service.
This is on top of the
On top of,
the ambulance fee.
okay.
This goes to the municipality. They pay us, plus we also collect for the ambulance fee.
Understand, thank you.
Good question. It also gives us the permission, correct, Chief, to go into their jurisdiction. But what absent this type of agreement, we respond to Johnson's Creek without the technical permission to do so. So, even though they're requesting our service. Any other questions? Elissa?
Phillips?
Aye.
Quartermassey?
Aye.
Britton?
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Folkhouse?
Aye.
Prather?
Aye.
Schmidt?
Aye.
Morone?
Aye.
Next is Exhibit 8866. This is authorizing the EMS service coverage agreement with the Village of Reeseville, and this is here for me and the Finance Committee.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. Motion by Larson, seconded by
I'll second.
Holthouse. Thank you. Questions?
And again, just to clarify, this is an increase from services, just a renewal of what we normally charge them for last year to year.
Yes, this one is, this is where we provide EMS transport. They pay us to respond and transport. We also charge for EMS billing. This one is a yearly contract, and this year, we're proposing to charge them the same as a city resident is.
Just
It is an
to,
increase over last year's contract.
about
with-
double.
based on the number
It's
of
about
calls and the amount of
100% increase.
resources we've had to expend to cover them.
Goes off of their assessed values.
Oh, okay.
It's a increase to what they paid last year, but it is equal to what you pay as a city resident here. We're not upcharging them
Well, no,
for
I was
being
just-
outside the city.
No, that's what I wasn't getting at that. I was just seeing if it was tied to the amount of resources and assets we've had to expend to provide that coverage due to an increased cost for overtime or vehicle wear and tear and those kind of things. I just make sure I understand the concept.
Yeah, it's wrapped up. Alderman Torres.
I think we can justify it because it's the same as we charge our own, but it's a doubling their fee. Do they have any alternatives?
They do, I'm sorry, you can speak to me.
They do have alternatives such as Beaver Dam or Waterloo.
So there's a possibility we'd lose this, and is that good or bad for us?
It's $12,000 that we would
Okay.
potentially be losing.
Right.
And we have a lot of calls, so I'm not happy to lose any revenue if that's the case, but it's a revenue that would be sustained, I would assume.
And we could justify it.
And I do want everyone to know, the chief has been in communication with Reeseville. They were aware that this was being discussed. They were aware that we were trying to work on a calculation. So we, even after Finance Committee, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he even gave a heads up that this was coming to council tonight in case someone wanted to be here. So we've been very mindful of keeping them in the loop. Any other questions? Elissa?
Larson?
Aye.
Folkhouse?
Aye.
Aye.
Schmidt?
Aye.
Morone?
Aye.
Phillips?
No.
Quartermassey?
Aye.
Britton?
Aye.
Our next is Exhibit 8867, and this is authorizing the township fire and EMS contracts with the towns of Watertown, Shields, Emmett, and Milford. This is here from me and the Finance Committee. And I believe there was a new one at your desk this evening. Look for a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. Motion by Larson,
I'll second.
seconded by Holthouse.
What's the change on the new one?
What we ended up changing is Alyssa's last name. And the other,
Again?
no. And the other thing too is we had a reference to Appendix A, which referred to the fire code. That was in a previous contract. We don't have to share the fire, it was already shared with them, so
Okay.
it was just more
Housekeeping.
housekeeping.
Any other questions? All right, Elissa.
Larson,
Aye.
Holthouse,
Aye.
Rather,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Morone,
Aye.
Pilch,
No.
Tortomasi,
Aye.
Britton,
Aye.
Next is Exhibit 8868. This is authorizing a budget amendment to allow for the purchase of a computer and used office furniture for the engineering department. This is here from me and the Finance Committee.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Motion by Tortomasi, seconded by Rather. Questions? I will use this opportunity to tell you all, we have a substantial amount of computers that are Windows 7. Oh, yeah, you saw that. That's exactly what I'm thinking in my head. Windows 7 is no longer going to be supported for security patches as of the end of this calendar year. So we are going to have a substantial investment in, where needed, new computers, and where we can sustain it with the operating system and the memory, just a patch, or an upgrade so that it can be patched. But nonetheless, this one in particular is an effort to use some money yet this year to start purchasing those computers that we're going to see quite heavily, unfortunately.
So it's really more for computers than furniture.
It's a split of both. Any other questions? Elissa?
Tortomasi,
Aye.
Britton,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Holthouse,
Aye.
Rather,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Morone,
Aye.
Pilch,
Aye.
Next is Exhibit 8869. This is authorizing a budget amendment to allow for the purchase of a computer for the Building Safety and Zoning Department. This is here from me and the Finance Committee.
I'll move to approve.
Motion by Larson, seconded by Tortomasi. Mid-4 even. Getting good. Questions? Same story here. Elissa?
Larson,
Aye.
Holthouse,
Aye.
Rather,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Morone,
Aye.
Pilch,
Aye.
Tortomasi,
Aye.
Britton,
Aye.
Thank you. Next is Exhibit 8870, and this is authorizing an agreement for the 2019-2020 between, contract, I presume, between the Watertown Economic Development Organization Corporation and the Watertown Main Street Program, and this is here from me.
I will move for approval.
Motion by Larson. I'm going to start looking at the other half of the room first. Seconded by Morone. This is something that previously, it's the same agreement that we have with the Main Street Program. It's something that's previously been signed. You're seeing it here because I can't enter into a contract without your permission. So operationally, nothing of substance is different. Any questions? Elissa?
Just a question.
I'm sorry.
So we're waiving our rights to a jury in case there's some kind of dispute that we have with them as a result of actions taken?
Yes.
Yep, correct.
We're that confident?
That was the language that was typically proposed, I believe, that's standard contract language for this particular agreement. Waiving your right to a jury is something that typically is you can do, you don't have to do it. If you want to attempt to negotiate this with the creator of the document, we can do so.
I'm just curious, I don't want to, like, if the intent is to protect the city, I don't want to throw away, rights that we can use to leverage to protect us against another state organization, which, they're a little bit larger than we are, but we want to protect ourselves from the bigger fish in the pond if we can. That'd be my only concern.
Any other comments? Elissa?
Larson,
Aye.
Holthouse,
Aye.
Rather,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Abstain.
Marone,
Aye.
Kilp,
Aye.
Tortomasi.
Aye.
Britton,
Aye.
All right, next is Exhibit 8871. This is authorizing the city to file an appeal as it pertains to WISPAC at 401 Dayton Street. This is here from me. I'll tell you about it once we get a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Oh, motion by Larson, sorry. Seconded by Rather. So this and the one that comes after it is essentially giving us permission. So it's the city assessed WISPAC. WISPAC is contesting that assessment. This is giving us permission to contest their contesting. I just like to say it, I think.
So they're contesting a lower value or a higher value than what they thought?
They are looking for their assessment to be lowered.
So lower base, so it's a tax issue, essentially.
It's a property tax issue. Yep. They're looking to be assessed at a lower value than what they were assessed for by the city. Is that correct? I'm sorry, the state, you're right. The state does those assessments of that size.
So the state does the assessment, but we have to contest it if they don't like it. But they contest it with us,
Yes.
not the state,
Well, they've contested with the state. Now we're contesting, they're contesting.
even though it's not with us.
Well, it's our property tax, but the state does property tax assessments for manufacturing.
That sounds interesting.
Yep. Now I think we've confused everyone, but
But, no, I'm
Alderman Brown.
tracking, so like,
Okay.
so the manufacturing's tax, the state does the assessment, but it hinges on what we get from that assessment based on the tax value that the
You've got
state
it.
then implies to the manufacturing.
you've got
So
it.
they've already contested it to the state, and then we're contesting their contesting of it. Is that about right? Did I get it?
Yes. Yep, you've got it.
Okay, just
Yep.
making sure I
No, I'm
understand.
glad- I'm glad you've-
I have never heard this case before. That was interesting.
They've appealed second year.
Okay, well, it was last
Alderman
year
Marone.
with me.
Yeah, this is part of a bigger scene, really. It's called the dark store loophole that businesses are trying to get their assessments lowered to what the value of the building would be if there was nothing in it. It was a dark store, empty building, rather than being assessed at a viable, thriving business. And I know the League of Wisconsin Municipalities is working on this, and I think even with Scott Fitzgerald and Jagler have been involved.
We've been having discussions about dark stores since the day I started, and I have engaged both our senator and our representative in those conversations. This is predominantly around big box, so we see it a lot with Walmarts and, Lowe's and, those types of businesses. Some of these cases have been starting to be heard in court, and thankfully are going in the way of the municipality in most cases. So now, unfortunately, because this has perpetuated for so many years, we're starting to see non-big box stores, kind of following suit.
So no, just to clarify, these properties are currently actively being used by the business.
This is WISPAC.
So they're not just vacant buildings that are sitting there vacant. This is operational, day-to-day, there's people coming and going on a regular basis.
This is the WISPAC that you would think of on Dayton Street.
The one I used to pass all the time for work.
Yep, yeah.
Got it?
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions? Let's call the roll.
Larson,
Aye.
Holthouse,
Aye.
Rather,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Marone,
Aye.
Kilps,
Aye.
Tortomasi,
Aye.
Britton,
Aye.
Next is Exhibit 8872, and this is authorizing the city to file an appeal for WISPAC Incorporated at 816 West Street. This is here from me.
I'll move for Exhibit 8872.
Motion by Marone, seconded by Britton. Same thing, just two parcels. Any other comments? Elissa?
Marone,
Aye.
Kilps,
Aye.
Tortomasi,
Aye.
Britton,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Holthouse,
Aye.
Rather,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Thank you. Next is Exhibit 8873. This is authorizing the purchase of a fully trained police canine from Giuseppe Canine Services LLC. This is here from me and the Finance Committee.
I will move to approve.
Motion by Larson, seconded by Britton. Sir?
I do have questions. I did read the notes in the packet on this in regards to the facility we're getting the dog from and some of the concerns from the other individuals. One of the things that I'd like some clarification on that I didn't see in that information is why the owner is in this case, selling us his dog, as was in the notes, and it doesn't say what kind of training the officer is going to receive, or is that part of the purchase price in regards to the handling for that specific animal?
It's not his dog specifically.
Okay.
This is a dog that he's imported in, like he does with all of his police canines. So this is not anything, it's been in his kennel for a few weeks because he's been training with it. All of the canines that are trained for police work are there for weeks before they're sold. So they're trained in drug detection, all of the things that you would think that a police canine would be trained in. So they're trained for all of those things, because if they can't do that work, then he doesn't sell the dog. So then it goes back. So this is a canine, and he had several of the canines there. So we went and picked out a canine. And then we do have a canine officer that was selected last year, and that canine officer is Officer Hensley. And Officer Hensley will now start training with this canine at the kennel, where all of the work that the dog knows, he will now learn with his handler.
And what was the timeline that the kennel then provided training to the dog before we would then get it, and how much training is going to be provided to the officer after the fact?
The officer will be there, I want to say, at least 4 weeks with the canine, and they're there every day, Monday through Friday, from 8 to 4. So he'll train with that dog for the next 4 weeks. And prior to that, he's had the dog, he brought in, he imports them, and I want to say that this dog came in with several others, and I don't have the exact timeline, but it's been at least a month that those dogs have been there, if not a little bit longer, that he was working with them. And it's not just him, he has a staff that he works with as well.
Okay. My concern with this, Chief, not that we don't need a canine for the city, is a month, when it comes to dealing with service dogs or any kind of canine for that kind of work, is extremely short. And if you're only giving another 4 weeks, that's 8 weeks of training. That seems really short when most programs are 6 to 8 months or longer.
The dogs come here, though, with training, though, too. So the dogs come here with training, then they work with him at this kennel. And like I said, it's been longer than a month. I just don't have the exact timeline of how long that dog has been there. I can get that for you. But, and then like I said, our officer will work like the next month straight with that dog.
And then do they provide the documentation from where the breeder gets all that stuff?
The documentation, the breeding, everything has been provided to a local veterinarian as well,
Okay.
veterinarian that we work with. So all of the x-rays, all of those things were looked at by Watertown Animal Health Center. They
Okay.
looked at everything, gave the approval for the dog, for the health. So there were no concerns there at all.
Okay. And I guess what was the reason for choosing an organization as new as that one was versus others within the region?
Giuseppe is nearby.
Okay.
They are a little bit newer in the area, but they are being used by a lot of departments in the area and across the state, actually. A lot of departments are purchasing canines from their kennel. For us, it's a little bit of a matter of convenience, I guess, as well, because he came highly recommended. A lot of departments are using him. He's nearby for us for training and retraining, so Officer Hensley can go there whenever he needs to for training, and that's convenient for us because he has the setup there to do all the training, locker searches, all those things that you would know of.
Right.
He has that there, which is hard to come by. It's hard to find those things. And our last canine, Officer Namia would have to travel to Michigan for recertifications and all those things. So we would have to pay those expenses, travel expenses, all those things for recertification, whereas here we won't have to do that for recertification.
So the cost long-term will be much reduced to the city then?
Yes.
And I just did a lot of research in this because canine is something I deal with a lot with the military.
Yep.
So I did notice that they do have a warranty in case there is an issue where we can return the dog, I guess.
Yes.
And I did see that they were dominantly Belgian Shepherds, but they also have some Czech Shepherds.
Yep.
Which one did we wind up with then?
We have a check.
We have a Czech.
Yep.
Okay. And how old is
18 months.
so it's a relatively young pup with a good start?
I can show you a picture after.
Okay. I'd like to see some of the paperwork too that we got too.
Sure.
Thank you for your good questions, Alderman Schmidt. I just want to make note that it's not abundantly clear. There was quite a bit of conversation at the meeting, but the comment about Officer Hensley stating that the dog was not selected by him, it was the owner's dog, that is in reference to the citizen's concern about the 7-year-old that was
And I saw that,
that was
yes.
fatally injured. Officer Hensley was saying that dog that attacked that 7-year-old was the owner's dog that he was training. So the trainer didn't select that dog. His customer brought the dog to him
Okay.
and trained that dog.
So that, when I read that,
Yeah.
it read as if it was the
Our
agent's,
dog.
the kennel's dog, the owner of the kennel is
Sure.
providing his personal dog to us.
Yeah,
That's
no.
how I read that section.
Yep.
So that's why I wanted
Yep.
clarification on that part,
Yep.
so.
Yep, so
That's
that's,
another, that's separate
So
incident.
two
where
separate issues
Customer has a dog, brought it to his kennel
for training.
and brought it there, and it stayed there for training.
Okay.
correct.
I just wanted to clarify, because when I read that, I'm like, doesn't, because when I went to the company's website, it's okay-ish, but when you go to their Facebook page, it's far more robust in regards to what you get for information,
Yep.
those training locations that you mentioned. So
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure that we're looking at all the angles to make sure we're getting a good product here, so.
Yep, and that's why I asked, make sure we had a warranty, all of those things. And
And I-
that's why I wanted to make sure that the dog, at least all of the records were looked at by our local veterinarian before we accepted it.
And I did see that most of the funds is coming from donations, if I read that correctly?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
I might start attaching canines to a lot of line items because those donations come in like hotcakes.
Yes, they do.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Elissa?
Larson,
Aye.
Holthouse,
Aye.
Rather,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Marone,
Aye.
Hilps,
Aye.
Quartermassy.
Aye.
Britton.
Aye.
All right, our last exhibit is 8874. This is authorizing the City of Watertown to apply to the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources Urban Forestry Grant. This is here from me and the Finance Committee.
Move
I'll
to
move.
approve.
I'll
Motion by
second.
Tortomasi, seconded by Larson. Questions or comments? Elissa?
Quartermassy,
Aye.
Britton.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Holthouse.
Aye.
Rather.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Marone.
Aye.
Hilps.
Aye.
All right, our next agenda item is comments and suggestions from citizens present. We've really lost our crowd. So before I look for a motion to adjourn, I just want to remind everyone, October 14th, jot it down, please. We will be doing a joint plan commission and council meeting, and that is at 4:30, and that is largely a timing issue. We will be reviewing the second draft of the comprehensive plan and the park and open spaces final version of that plan. So I realize that's not perfectly ideal, but we have some timelines that we're working in, and is that the same day of the council meeting? Is that a Tuesday?
No, it's the regular.
The regular scheduled plan commission meeting? Okay. Okay, with that, I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
On Monday.
Will that be here,
It'll be in this room.
in this room?
Yep.
Okay.
And you'll get an agenda, and I just wanted to make note.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, Alderman Ritten. Motion by Ritten, seconded by Holthouse. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.